For those of you who don't know what this is, my name is Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am an astronomer working at CosmoQuest.org. We are a NASA-funded project that is working to bring you ways to interact with science, whether you're working on doing it with us through our various citizen science engagements, or you're coming on here to learn how we model various things, various processes that go on throughout the solar system. If I sound a little off tonight, it's because I have been traveling, and I had hoped being the operative word, to get home last night. But I was trying to fly from Boston to St. Louis via Chicago with snowstorms hitting in both Boston and Chicago. And I ended up missing my final connection. So I ended up without my winter coat in Chicago last night, and had to take a shuttle bus to a hotel 10 miles away. And I'm trying to hot tea myself into not getting a head cold of some sort. But for now, I'm going to eat my mic and not stress my voice too much. I am going to turn off my tea kettle, though, so you don't have to hear it. Yeah, it wasn't just the jet stream. It was all of that dang white puffy moisture falling out of the air that delayed me last night. Oh man, it's snowing in the UK. That's a thing. But welcome to our feed, and I hope we provide you something good to distract you from the white, horribly cold thing that is winter 2018. So welcome. My goal for this evening was to continue working on a crater simulator that I've been working on coding. Now, this isn't the kind of crater simulator that shows the effects of the impact, but rather it's one that I'm working on to show how a surface changes over time and how surfaces of different ages will look different because of different kinds of cratering. So links works. Units matter. If you don't tell me what units you're using, I'm going to assume that it's -1 cow there. I always assume units of cow unless units are specified. -1 Fahrenheit. Yeah. So we've been running at about -8 to -20 wind chill, and we got up to a whole 8 degrees without wind chill. Yeah, it's quite cold, and yeah, we're colder than you are, Paranor. Hey there, Andy, welcome. So welcome to all of you. So I'm going to go over and switch views from this one, which is all me, and instead switch over to one that is, more code. So this is just the beginning of the code that we've been working on, and I'm going to go ahead and show you where we are, and let me know if it's not something that's easy for you to see. As I've said before, I'm using the processing language just because it's super easy to write graphics in. So here's how it goes. Oh, it's going to do it somewhere else on the screen. Okay. So we have some coloration issues is the first thing I'm noticing. So what we'd worked on last week was getting it so that these actually kind of look like craters, where they have brightness on one edge, shadow on the other edge. And then once we'd gotten that shape kind of nice, the next thing that we worked on was making it so that newer craters and older craters are different colors. But I did this such that the oldest craters form dark, and the newest craters formed bright. Now, the reality is that on a real rocky surface, what ends up happening is a crater forms white, or light at least, in many cases on the moon, because it's uncovering underlying bright materials. And then over time, those bright materials get what we call weathered by solar radiation, by essentially interacting with high energy particles, ultraviolet light, and all of these different interactions will change the color of the material until it matches its surroundings. Now, what I'd like to do this week is get it so that craters, when they form, are bright, and then over time they fade away. So I'm going to focus in on this first box initially. So in my code, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to comment out a whole lot of stuff, just so that we don't have to watch. Well, I can just always stop it while we're going. That's probably easier than commenting things out. So the way that we run this is, and my fish tank just made a really bizarre noise and was leaking earlier. Pardon me while I look around at my fish tank. Okay, so the really weird noise was just a fish burrowing. Sorry about that distraction. I'm hoping my fish tank doesn't start spewing water again. Okay, anyways, back to the code. What I want to do is have the craters, which are getting generated on the fly with randomized positions, randomized sizes to a certain degree, have it so that those centers and those radii get stored into arrays, and then I can just pull that information out of the array and redraw them every frame. So if we watch how this plays again, what happens is, let me pull it back down. So what happens is they get generated and they get drawn, and each frame, things just get layered one on top of the other. Well, what I need to do instead of constantly just leaving everything in the background, what I need to do is redraw each frame so that those colors get overdrawn with constantly fading towards background colors. So the way I want to do this, like I said, is I want to store things in an array, and I want to redraw things every time. So thinking through how I want to do this, one of the first things I need to do is initialize my arrays. The way arrays work is you essentially have a whole bunch of different cups that you can store information in, sort of like pouring liquid into a variety of cups to store it for later. You can either have a flight where everything is a different flavor, everything can be the same. It doesn't matter as long as you have the cups. But it's not enough to put out 5 coasters. You have to put out 5 coasters, which are the places that the information gets stored, and then also the container. And in some languages, you can just like randomly add things to your array, and the language is good with it, and it doesn't care that you never warned it you were going to have 26 different array items. It's fine. It may become bitter, but it's fine. This language isn't one of those. This language wants to know ahead of time exactly how many of everything you need to give it. And the way that I'm going to set this is I'm going to go through and I'm going to see if I can figure out how many total frames I have. And if I know how many total frames I have, that's the max number of array elements I'm going to need. And well, I could be fancy pants and say in my first column in my T equals 50, I only need a certain number of items. In my T equals 100, I only need a certain number of items. I'm just going to make them all the same size because I'm lazy. So I have 50, 100, 150, 200 are the different number of elements that I'm going to have. So I'm just going to do all of my arrays to be 200. Now, the nice thing about this is I can also just reuse my arrays, because I'm going to do the t equals 50 all at once. Then I'm going to do the t equals 100, then the 150. So I'm just going to keep reusing the same set of arrays. So the way this works out, I'm going to I'm looking at this to realize I've at no point whatsoever added any comments on what these variables mean. So I have a color, and the only reason I know this is color is I know myself, and I didn't document what this is. So this is a reminder. Comments are your way of showing that you love yourself. You write comments so that your future self knows what your past self was thinking. So apparently my default fill color, is that what this means? Fill color? I think that's what it means. So my color for craters by default is going to be that color. Okay, so yeah, it gets interesting when you don't comment your code. Let me catch up on what's in the chat. So I could make it a linked list linkport, but I actually don't know if this language supports linked lists. Hello, commentor person. Welcome to our channel. I'm working on coding a cratering simulation. Okay, so I now know that I have a bunch of different variables. So x equals 0, y equals 0. Why did I even need to have that? I think that's just me setting up variables. These are crater positions getting initialized. Thank you for the follow, commenter person. So crater positions getting initialized. X off. I sound like wax on, wax off, but with a variable name. Again, you write comments to prove that you love yourself, or at least your future self. I have a variable. I don't know what its purpose is. I just know it has a ridiculous name. Let's search for it in the code. So sometimes it's useful to, okay, I have a variable I never ever used. I'm going to delete it. Sometimes it's really useful to just use find functions to figure things out. So this is what I use to count steps through frames. This is what I use for all the random for loops. This is arrays about duration, and interval is starting number of frames. Okay. It's so we all learn by watching other people code, Bill. It's cool that you're here. Hopefully you'll learn some science. Hopefully you'll learn some code. And if nothing else, you'll get to learn about the rich levels of sarcasm that are inspired by the process of coding. So Linkswort, the website that you can grab processing from is processing.org. And you're reminding me, I need to figure out how the heck you store processing code in GitHub. I haven't actually done that before, and I should be doing that. So I'm going to, I want to write a note for myself, but my desk is currently kind of destroyed. So hopefully I will simply remember. And yes, Paranor, AutoMod has it out for you personally, I think. I have no clue why AutoMod would not like that one. And Bill, I thrive on a mix of sarcasm and caffeine. Okay, so let's set up more of our arrays that we're going to need. So I'm going to have crater X. So this is the crater's positions. I'm going to have int crater Y. And these actually have nothing to do with durations. So let me not actually put them there. Pardon the not thinking that through. And int crater radius. So these are the three different things that determine a crater. Looking at the chat for a second. And it's true, this is much easier, Big J. This is much easier than learning to code than by watching than learning a foreign language. At least for a brain that works with like mine. Other brains may vary. Okay, so we have these three different variables set up that are arrays of variables. And I have an interval of 50, and then I have my arrays for the durations. So looking to see how I set this up. So here I am. I defined the value for each of the durations when I set things up. So I'm going to comment this. So put into array of dir how many frames is in each quadrant, 0 to 3, because we do a 0 indexed starting point here. True fact, I tend to lie to waiters and waitresses about how many people are in my party because I'm used to starting my count with 0, which does not work when you're requesting tables in a restaurant. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to initialize my X, Y arrays. Actually, I can do that up above, can't I? So I need to simply say, no, I don't think I can do that. Never mind. So initialize arrays of crater values. So I'm going to have these three different arrays, crater X, Y, R, and I'm going to set them up as crater X. Why are you yelling at me that way? I just got a very strange error I was not expecting. Crater X equals, why do you think it's a class? Okay, now you're doing better. Crater X equals an int of, I'm going to do this, and I need to say new because I'm doing an array, and I want this to be my interval length. Except my interval started at 50 and it didn't stay at 50, did it? Interval starting number of frames. So I want to do this before I change my interval value. Okay. So let's initialize those variables. And since these are mostly the same, I'm going to let copy and paste be my friend. X, Y, R. Okay, so I now have all of the cups set up so that we can fill them with the values of where the craters go. Okay, so now I'm scrolling down to find where I started creating craters. So here are where I started creating craters. Okay, so I know that all that code works. I don't want to change any of it. Then down here is where it's getting set to draw things. So before I draw them, and is this a good place to do it? So at some point what I need to do is store all of the information for the crater that was just created into the array. And then what I'm going to do is redraw everything in that array up to that particular value. So I know what frame I'm in because I'm counting my frames using the variable I, and I know which duration I'm in because of these if statements. So if I'm sticking them all in an array, it doesn't matter if I redraw everything. It's not awesome, but I can optimize later. So let's do this the easy way instead of the optimized way initially. So what I'm going to do, now that I've blathered incoherently at you for a moment, is I'm going to say, for each given frame as it goes through my code, what it does is it says, I'm going to produce a new crater, and I'm going to put this new crater in this randomized location with this randomized radius. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that random position and that random radius, and I'm going to store it. And then I can use it again. Okay, so crater X of wherever the heck I am in the travels through creating this is going to get stored. And I'm going to do the same thing with Y equals Y, Y, other case. This is a case-sensitive language, which is kind of good and kind of evil all at the same time. I need to figure out where I set the size. So I just set it to R. I'm consistent in how I use my variables. Okay. So now I've pushed that to an array. And what I want to do is have it, when it first forms, be white and then fade over time. So what I have down here below currently is I'm setting up how to draw the ellipse. I'm only drawing things that have a radius greater than 4. So let's set this now is going to be, this code down here is going to get turned into this loop I'm creating. So I'm going to start by adding the bits and pieces of it systematically to here. So I need to have a new for loop, and since I'm going to have inside of it a for loop, I need to come up here and create another variable to loop over. So let's add a k. Int, actually, let's do int. I want to give this a meaningful number. Now I'm just going to call it k. Int k. That's fine. I'm just looping through a loop. Okay. So I'm going to say for k equals 0, error in, okay, now you're happy. k less than or equal to I. K plus plus. So what this is saying is do what's inside this loop for every item in the array until you get to the point where the array index and the number of frames of the software that have run are exactly the same. Because there's not going to be any information past that point, so please don't go past that point. That would cause things to end horribly. So this time, to make it simple, I'm just going to make it draw everything, and I'm not going to worry about changing the color this initial time. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to copy my code that is just drawing it. And I'm trying to figure out where I was adjusting the color on it. I wonder if I'm changing color up here somewhere. Oh, I bet I'm changing color at the bottom. Yep, I'm evolving color. So I'm going to kill my changing of the color. And other than that, I'm going to take all this code and I'm going to hope copy and paste indents. I'm going to be sad if it doesn't. It sort of did. Not really. I'm sad. Okay, so let's do this to our crater X, crater Y, crater R, crater R. Now I have to give it an index. So in this case, the index is just going to be the K that I'm stepping through. So it's going to redraw each crater each time. And page down and arrow down are not the same key. Excuse me while I refine myself in my code. Okay, there's that. So again, putting comments in because clearly I didn't love my future self last time I was coding. Oh, there's the comment at the end. Okay, draw. Let's draw an ellipse at our normal random location. Then this is going to be so it's an arc. It's for a certain percentage of the radius. And I'm trying to figure out if that's the bright one or the dark one. And I'm not sure. Stroke is color plus 50. Things are... So this is going to be the bright one. So this is bright part. And then this is the dark part. So the part that I'm doing here is I'm making shadows and highlights. Hello, Impy the Painter. Welcome. Okay, so I now need to put my coordinates back in like I did above, but now I'm doing it instead for my arc. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for this arc. And fixing my cursed indenting flails. And then what this does is it redraws, remember the comment, redraws outer circle. So let's replace that. Now in theory, what I've just done, and the only thing I've just done, unless I screwed up, which is possible, I do that fairly commonly, what I have just done is I've made it so that it's storing all of the craters in an array, and it will redraw the craters as it goes. And all of them will be the same color. And if this works, the next thing that I'm going to work on doing is getting it to add the colors back in, but have it so that the craters change colors over time. So let's see if I successfully, I have a missing bracket. Okay, so somewhere up here. I know I had deleted an extra one, but I thought I'd written an extra one. I guess I hadn't. Let's see if that works. Cannot convert float to int. Why are you trying to convert a float to an int? Where did I make something a float that shouldn't have been? Oh. Okay, I guess my positions are floats. Little did I know. So let me go ahead and make these floats. And then I'll have to go fix the other place where I made them floats. I'm a lazy coder. So let's see. Somewhere in here, these need to be floats. Everything is just gonna float away. Okay, let's try that. So this seems to be working, sort of. And then I have an array index out of bounds. So something went sideways and I have a whirly rainbow. Okay, so now comes the debugging part. Okay. Oh, I know what the problem is. Our interval's 50, but I actually go to, in the end, 4 times that. So let's do interval times 4. Let's try that. So it's doing some weird stuff when it redraws, where it's like adding and subtracting all the shadows as it goes, because it's determining the shadows based on the R value versus the stored radius value. And I'm still out of bounds. Okay, so, oh, that's right. Because I have to add these together rather than multiplying them. So it's 50 plus 100 is 150, plus 150 is 300, plus 200 is 500. Okay, so let's do this correctly, not incorrectly, which seems to be how my brain is working. Interval times 10 is the way it actually turns out. Okay, so let's see if I now have the correct number of intervals, and I'm going to switch that crazy arc issue that it was having. So here we're having R. That should have been my crater value. And that was just leading to some really weird redrawing as we were going. So let's try redoing this. I like what you just said. Impy the Painter, and I have no clue how I ended up with such a large crater right there. So there is something really satisfying about debugging, especially when you're debugging somebody else's code. Yeah, I agree. It's that you found that one thing that isn't right. It's like the one tile in the floor that is just not quite lined up, and you get to fix that thing. And I'm going to rerun this just to make sure that that giant crater was a fluke of the Gaussian, and not something else. So this is what we got on the first couple. And now we're down here. So that's weird that we're getting slightly different distributions. I'm going to run it one more time because I'm being suspicious. But the thing with using random number generators is sometimes you will get freakily different things. So it seems to be working. It seems to have just been the fluke of statistics. Okay, so what it's doing now is it's correctly drawing all of my craters. Now what I want it to do is draw it so that the craters start out white and then slowly fade towards the background color over time. Okay, so let's come over here, and what I want to do is find that loop I just created and think for a moment. Oh, and I also have another R I need to switch here, I'm seeing. So I need to do if crater R, that was probably having some really weird statistical chaos into the system. So if crater R is greater than 4, let's go ahead and draw it. So I need to set the color here. So fill is going to now be a variable. And I was just attacked by a ladybug. I don't know if you saw that fly through the camera. And I want fill to be directly related to where I am in this loop. I want it to start as white, which I think is 255. Not actually sure. I believe it's 255 is white. So I'm going to set my color is equal to 255 minus. Now I want the most recent version to be brightest. So I need this to be the oldest are, let me think about this. So what I want is when something is first drawn, when the K value and my frame number are exactly the same, I want the color to be white. The larger the difference between my current frame number and when the crater was created, so the larger the difference between those two numbers, the blacker I want it to be. So if K k minus I did that wrong, k minus I is 0, then that will give me a white crater. Now the only issue with this is my I value is how many total frames have been going. So it might be that I'm actually on to that next set of 100. So I need to actually get the remainder of my frame number divided by 50. So this is where I don't know if modulus is the correct command to use in processing. So I'm pulling up my processing reference guide, and let me get the whole thing on the screen. Oh, I accidentally clicked on something while dragging, and there's now a ladybug climbing across my computer screen, but you totally can't see that. Okay, so that's not what I wanted. I want to search on the page for modulus. I just want to like math it. Okay, let's see what remainder is. Nope. Okay, do you have a math section? Math. That was sad. You don't really have a math section. Okay, operators, modulo, that's what I want. So the way this works is like 5 divided by 4, the remainder is 1. This is exactly what I want. So what I'm going to say is I have I modulo 50. Okay, so that is the ugliest calculation of a fill color ever. If the difference between how long it's been drawing this, and this won't work for all of them. Okay, almost there, almost there. So what I'm running into that has been confused is the first time we run this, it goes from 0 to 50 frames. Second time it goes from 0 to 100, then 0 to 150, and then 0 to 200. And I need to take that into account when I'm determining my colors. So luckily, I can sort of reuse this set of if statements here. Sort of. So and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a new variable that is going to be the current duration. And this will let me know how long the interval that I'm in right now is going to be. So int cur_dir. Thank you for the follow, Raging Hamster. You have a fabulous username, Raging Hamster. Okay, so I'm going to let this set my current duration. So now I'm going to come down to my if statements, and what it's going to do is it's going to set my X and Y, and it's also going to set my current duration is equal to the duration of whichever frame I'm in. And yes, it's going to be setting this way more than it needs to. I don't care. Sometimes you write inefficient code. It's effective. It's just not efficient. You write a code that runs more lines than it needs to because it's understandable. And then you go back and you make it optimized later if you need to. But modern computers are fast enough that I am not worried about setting this variable extra times. I am worried about setting it to the correct thing, which is why I'm proofreading. Okay, so I want to do modulo my current number of frames while setting the color. Okay, let's see if that insanity I just created works. Well, I'm creating white. I have lots of white craters. That did not go as intended. Okay, stop that. Hi, IK Raider. I'm working on simulating how craters are formed on rocky worlds. So when we're trying to measure how old a different surface is, like the surface of the moon, we count how many craters are there. And I can show you my craters of too much white. So this first grid is a fairly young area on the surface. It's only been around for 50 units of time. This next one, it's been around 100 units of time. It has more craters. This down here has been around for 150 units of time. You can see it has even more craters. The 200 units of time has still even more craters. And in reality, craters form white and get grayer and grayer over time. And it's the getting grayer that I'm currently working on and completely failed at. So, okay. I think I'm going to have to figure out how to output the color calculation I just did, because clearly that didn't work. So I'm just looking over everything. Print. I was trying to find, I knew I had it somewhere. Just wanted to find where I had it. Okay, so I'm going to print the color when I calculate it. I'd really like to know why in January there's a ladybug slowly treating my desk like the Alps and going on a hunting expedition. Okay, so here we go. With my insane attempt to calculate color, I'm just going to create a new variable, crater color. I'm going to set it equal to that, all of that. I'm now going to take this and I'm going to set it to, I'm going to fill things in with crater color. And because I think I need to, I'm going to print crater color plus /n, which is a new line. Hopefully this will help me figure out what's going on. Yes, this is kind of art. Maybe missing a semicolon. How about, am I missing parentheses? Let me find where I used the print command again. Okay, I'm missing parentheses. One of the problems with speaking a bunch of computer languages is my head can never keep track of exactly how to use some of the commands that I know change constantly between languages. Okay, so I can see that it's changing the color, but the color is increasing rather than decreasing. And yeah, that doesn't work so well. Let's try and figure out how to do this. So I want 255 minus, do I have those numbers in the wrong order? So K is the frame I'm on. So So, sorry, K is where I am looping through the array, redrawing things. And I is my current frame. So I have this backwards minus K. And the other thing that I'm thinking while I'm here is at most I'm going to have 200 frames. So potentially I could add a small factor to increase this, but let's see what we get with this for starts. Okay, so now we're getting slowly fading to gray. Didn't really fade that much to gray. So you can see them very gradually fading, but nowhere near enough. The ones in the background are sure fading. Oh, something went terribly, terribly wrong. Now I have things redrawing in like crazy colors. So something went terribly, terribly wrong, and I ended up with yellow craters. So the exact number of craters changes a bit. I'm trying to make this as close to the way it actually works as possible. And so when I'm drawing the craters, each frame, there's a certain probability that there won't be a new crater formed that frame. So, okay, let's see what I can do to fix this. The first thing I need to do to fix this is, so in my t equals 50, there's the potential to have up to 50 craters, but I won't have that many due to the chance that a crater won't form. Now, the problem that I'm having is it kept redrawing it after it was done with that particular part of the moon forming. So I think what I need to do is make sure it only redraws those for the duration that I'm currently in. Okay. So, how to do this? My current duration is set by these here. So I always want to draw from current duration minus 50 to current duration. So for this particular loop, I don't want to actually start at 0. I want to start at my current duration minus 50. So doing that should get it so that it stops crazily redrawing things. So let's see if I fixed that. Except it hates me. Okay, what did I do? Oh, I forgot a parenthesis. Okay, let's try this again. So the reason that I'm redrawing things in each loop, Gordon, is Keeper of Maps is named Gordon. Keeper of Maps. The reason I'm redrawing things each time is to change the color. So what I want is to get them to fade to darker and darker over time. And I seem to have profoundly broken something. I'm not sure what I broke, but I broke something because I'm not getting nearly as many craters as I would have expected. Okay, so let's take a look at what I just did. Not all of these have the same duration. Crud. Okay, so current duration minus... Oh, I know how to do this. I need a current and a previous. So I need to set the loop to go from a given starting value for that particular quadrant. So t equals 50 goes from 0 to 50. T equals 100 actually goes from 51 to 101 is what it actually does. 151. So I have to get that stepping into the loop to work correctly. And that's okay. I can do that if I just remember to set both the current and the previous. So here, previous dir is equal to dir 0. Again, there's probably a much more optimized way to do it. I'm just going to get it to work first. This is my goal at the moment. Make it work. Equals dir 1. And this one equals prev dir equals dir 2. And now coming down here to look at this, I want to do cur dir minus previous dir. So my current duration minus my previous duration is what I want to start my color at. Now, I want the amount that it fades. Well, let me make sure this works first. Then we'll solve the color problem. I'm missing a semicolon again. Cur dir minus previous dir. Where do you think I'm missing it? There it is. Okay. Let's try this again. Now it is drawing nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing. Okay. It didn't like the first box. Drew the second box. It's drawing the third box. It's drawing the fourth box. Okay, so I did something wrong with that first box. So just for giggles and grins, I will redefine previous duration equals 0 and see if that helps. Yep, Impy, I totally borked it. But I do have craters that are changing colors. So that makes me happy. Okay, so let's see if that fixed it. No, it doesn't want to draw my first interval at all. It hates my first interval. It's going to do the second interval. It's going to do the third interval. Okay, so why doesn't it want to draw my first interval? So K equals... Oh, I know why. It needs to actually start at 50 or it won't work. So let's do previous dir equals, so somewhere I set the interval. So initially I want previous dir equals interval. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, no, it didn't like that at all. Okay, what did I do wrong? I'm just going to type it in as 50. I will figure out what is wrong later. Goodbye. Let's try that again. Ah, I got it back. It's drawing them again. Okay, so we have the first quadrant drawing. We have the second one drawing. We have the third one drawing. The issue is that the colors are fading so gradually that you don't really notice it. Although it seemed to be changing the colors on our third interval. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the third interval was changing as well. So there's something going on with the intervals where it stops changing the colors on the first interval. It stops changing the colors on the second interval. I'm now drawing the third interval. They're fading. Now it started the fourth interval. Now look at the color of these two craters here. They're still getting darker and darker. Maybe not. Maybe that was... Nope, this one is definitely getting darker and darker. So yeah, I'm having issues. Okay. So issue one is you can't tell that these are getting darker. So for any given group, I want to have the amount that it gets darker per frame be related to the size of the interval. So coming down here, the size of the interval is going to be my current duration minus my previous duration. No. Is that right? Is that what I'm doing wrong here? The size is equal to that difference. But where I start isn't equal to that difference, is it? Thinking, hold on. So if I'm at 150 and I subtract 100, that's my previous. That starts me off at the wrong number is what's happening. Okay, so let's think through this logic some more. So where I'm getting befuddled is this first quadrant forms from time 0 to 50. So I want to run k from 0. So the current interval ends at 50. My previous duration, I set that one to 50, and I faked it to get the right number. But on the second one, I want to run from this minus this gets me 51. Now, this runs for the length of its duration. So, no. Okay. I have duration is an array, and I need to just store how long each of these are into an array. So instead of trying to math it, I'm just going to store the numbers. I calculate these in here somewhere, I think. So where do I set what my durations are equal to? Do I do that up here? Yes. So here's where I'm calculating all of this insanity. Okay. So duration I is equal to a given interval. So that's how long it lasts. And then the next time it runs, it's going, this is bad. Don't do what I just did. Don't ever do what I just did. And I need to set this as a new array somewhere, I think, or it's going to bork. Yep, right there. So each interval has this many different steps in it. So now I have the duration of each interval in frame space and also in actual space. So dir is leaving comments because I like my future self. Dir equals the max frame count for an interval, and intervals is how many frames are in each interval. And keeper of maps, that's most of the way there, but not quite there. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So, okay, I have my intervals now stored. Let's see if I can clean up down here where I'm setting the colors. Scrolling. Okay, so what I want to do is I need to set my previous duration better. So my previous duration is, so the first one goes from, okay, so those are all fine. Now here I want K to go from 0. So previous to, yeah, those are fine, but aren't working, but I'm going to figure that out in a moment. So those should be correct. No, cur div minus previous div. So what's in those values if I use this one as an example? So duration 3 is the last frame in the frame count. Yeah, it's looking into an array. It's last frame count for this duration. So this is saying everything in here goes from the last frame of the prior quadrant to the last frame of this quadrant. This probably needs to have a +1. It may be that just the one crater I'm seeing that's radically changing colors is just the leftover poor last one from the prior count. So previous dir on this one is 50. That doesn't seem like it should work. Somewhere my math in here is just not doing quite what I'd like, and that has me a bit perplexed. So the reason I'm perplexed is for this first quadrant here, it starts out, because it's trying to go from the maximum value of so my current ones has an interval, has a duration that ends at frame 50 and it starts at 0. So it needs to be k equals 0 is the starting point. Then my second interval needs to start at 51, and so it will go from the frame number 51 to 151. So there, the math should work, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm just going to lay it out there. I'm not sure. I don't think I need a minus before this. I'm thinking I may have an off by 50 in how I'm calculating this for loop. So let me look at my current and previous and see if I can, if they're the problem. So duration 0, let me scroll up and, okay, let me run this and then just stop it so I can get those values. Intervals cannot be related. Let's try that. Okay, stop. So the reason I stopped that is so the values that I have for durations are 50, 100, 200, 350. So what that means is for current duration, that equals 50, and I want to start at 0, so I set previous duration equal to 50 so that it would go to 0. So let me think through this one here. So on my second interval, it starts at 100, or rather it has the current duration is 100, and is that right? I feel like this isn't right, and that's part of why I'm having all of these problems. Because what I expected these numbers to be was 50, 150, 150, 250, 500, and that's not what they are. So it looks like I have a pair of errors. This is what you find when you're debugging. Okay, so let's find where I set those intervals initially. Up here. So I'm running this loop from I equals 0. So I start off with interval 0 is equal to 50 times I plus 1. Okay. So that means that, and then I want to do plus equals, and then I'm printing that. Oh, I set this in the wrong place. That's the problem. Okay. It helps to calculate things and then set their values. That's not what I did. I had an order of operations failure. So what I want is up here, interval equals 0. Here, interval. That was one problem. Okay, one bug fixed. And wow, bug. Let's try and find that bug. Okay. Where are you going out of bounds? So interval equals 0. New. Interval plus equals 50, I plus 1. Duration I equals interval. So that went to 500. Okay, so these numbers down here now match exactly what I was expecting. And somewhere it thinks I didn't set up an array to have as many pieces as it should. So I'm just going to scroll through and find everywhere I do a new array. So that's not the problem. How did I step out of bounds then? Better yet, where did I step out of bounds? Oh, and I hate this. I have another thing starting in a few minutes. Okay, right there is where I did it. Craters, X, Y, and R. Okay, so, I see what I did wrong. Let's just set this to 500. And to be safe, I'm going to set it to 501. Okay, so let's play that. So we now have craters getting drawn, craters getting darker. It stopped after the first. There we go. New interval is going. New interval is going. They are getting darker as they go. That makes me happy. Are they still changing colors? Yes. Okay. So I still have a bug, but I have another hangout that I'm doing on a different channel. Oh, wow. I have some major bugs. I have some new hangouts. I'm starting on a new channel in 10 minutes. And wow, I have yellow craters again. I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to come back to this next week and find where that bug is and work on getting the colors working. And yeah, it's probably a +1 issue somewhere. So I appreciate all of your patience with me this evening while I was working on coding this thing that went terribly, terribly sideways. Usually things go much smoother around here. I'm going to blame the fact that I spent the night at Chicago O'Hare Airport last night on my inability to code tonight. So just some quick things before I sign off for the evening. Hey, Pamela, I didn't know you were here. Yes, progress has been made. So my name's Dr. Pamela Gay. You can read that beneath my video. And I am the principal investigator of CosmoQuest. When I'm not coding crater simulators on Twitch, I'm working as one of the researchers and programmers behind our citizen science platform. And we provide a place where you can come and actually count craters on actual rocky surfaces that will allow us to measure the ages of these surfaces, just as, well, in theory, you could measure the ages of these simulated frames. I'd encourage all of you to go to CosmoQuest X and help us map out other worlds. And other than that, we also have seminars. We have all sorts of other things going on. And we invite you to be a part of all of it. I will be back Thursday night working on doing some API scraping as we work to figure out exactly who all follows us on Twitter. So I'm doing some data analysis of our Twitter audience, so you can come watch that. On Sunday, I think I will be back doing more telescope setup. I may have Big J, who you've seen in the chat, joining me. I don't know. I haven't talked to him yet. One or both of us will be working on setting up telescopes and quantifying how a CCD behaves and other things like that. In addition to those, Matt Richardson, who's one of our project postdocs, will be here on Wednesday and Friday. I'm not sure what he's going to be up to, but it's always interesting. And Big J has been popping on and doing some of his own work straight to camera. And I owe all of you more summaries of what all happened at the American Astronomical Society meeting last week. So that may come up at a random time, but right here at this place. So give the channel a follow so that you always get updates to when we're coming online, what's coming up next. And we're going to try and get better at using that event function. And if you could tell us when you're going to be attending things, it will encourage us to keep using that events function. So thank you all for coming this evening. And I hope you learned something. I know I learned something, which is that variable intervals are a pain to work with, but this will be worth it when I'm done. So thank you. And wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon. And keep on sciencing. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.